So here's the deal. I was 28, just kicked to the curb by a job I'd poured my soul into for the last 4 years. Corporate America was done with me, and I had nothing left but my tiny, crumbling apartment in a neighborhood no one cared to visit. Now, don't get me wrong, I wasn't expecting sympathy from anyone, but what really stung was the look of pity and judgment from the people I thought were my friends. The same people who had always thought they were too good for me, even when things were going okay. And when I lost my job, well, they didn't even bother to hide the fact that they thought I was a joke. Sarah, you always used to talk about living the dream, babe. But is this really it? Jess asked me one night, her voice full of that sugary sweet concern that had always made my skin crawl. She and the rest of our old crew had stopped by to check on me. At least, that's what they said. But I knew what they were really there for. A laugh. They were just dying to see how far I'd fallen. I invited them in anyway, keeping a smile plastered on my face as I watched them wrinkle their noses when they walked through my front door. The apartment wasn't exactly a palace. It was small, old, with peeling paint on the walls and an ancient fridge that hummed like it was on its last breath. But hey, it was mine. I wasn't ashamed of it. Jess flopped down on the threadbare couch with a little too much drama. Oh honey, I'm sorry, but this… I don't know. You deserve better than this. You've got so much potential, Sarah. Just look at this place. She didn't even realize how loud she was, and the rest of the group chimed in with their own brand of concern. I bit my tongue. I really did. Instead of telling them off like I wanted to, I offered them some wine and tried to laugh it off. Because deep down, I knew what they were really after. They didn't care about me. They cared about the life I could give them, or at least the connections I might still have. And just like that, my apartment was the butt of every joke. Ugh, I could never live here. One of them snickered. You know, my place is, like, so much better than this. I could hear the smugness in their voices, each of them bragging about their shiny, expensive lives. It was humiliating, but I kept my mouth shut. I had no energy for their shallow BS. But here's where things get interesting, because while my friends were busy poking fun at my cheap life, there was someone else in the building I had never paid any attention to. His name was Mr. Wilson, a guy who kept to himself, never talked to anyone, and who everyone assumed was just some old, retired man living out his last days in peace. He wasn't flashy. He didn't drive a fancy car or wear expensive suits. In fact, I never even saw him leave the building, except for his weekly trips to the little grocery store down the street. One day, I was taking out the trash when I saw him struggling with a big box of what looked like old books. Without thinking, I rushed over to help. Hey, let me give you a hand with that, Mr. Wilson, I said, feeling awkward but genuinely wanting to help. He gave me a slow smile and nodded. Thank you, Sarah. You're too kind. As we made our way inside, I noticed he had an old rickety elevator, one that definitely wasn't safe. He caught me staring and just shrugged. Used to be the building's pride and joy, he said, almost with a hint of nostalgia. Now it's just me and this old place. I didn't think much of it at the time. To be honest, I was more focused on getting back to my place before my friends turned into complete vultures. But something about Mr. Wilson stuck with me. He was kind, unpretentious, and there was something about him that felt different. A week later, I found myself standing in the lobby of the building, mentally preparing for the second round of judgment. My so-called friends were coming over again. Jess had texted earlier that day, asking if I could squeeze in a lunch so she could catch up. Translation: she wanted to rub her new promotion in my face. But as I stepped out, I ran into Mr. Wilson again. This time, he was carrying a large envelope. Hey, Sarah, he called, waving me over. Just wanted to drop this off. What's that? I asked, glancing at the thick envelope in his hand. Oh, just some papers. Nothing special. But, I was wondering if you'd mind helping me with something. His voice dropped to a whisper. I need someone to run a few numbers for me. You know, just to check. I don't trust the guys I've got on the payroll. Would you be interested? I paused, staring at him for a second. I'm not exactly the best with numbers, Mr. Wilson. I'm, well, between jobs right now. But, I can try. Well, he said with a smirk, I don't know anyone else around here who's got a head for details like you do. I can pay you for your time, of course. And that was how I started working for Mr. Wilson. The same old man who had lived next door, the one no one cared to even acknowledge, turned out to be a retired billionaire who had sold off multiple companies over the years and was now living a life of low-key simplicity. By the time Jess and the others showed up that afternoon, things had already shifted. I'd been working with Mr. Wilson for 2 weeks, helping him analyze investments, fine-tune his portfolio, and even get involved in some of his charitable work. The guy was a genius, and for some strange reason, he seemed to like having me around. When they walked into my apartment that day, they immediately noticed the change. For one thing, I wasn't just some broke girl living in a rundown building. No, I'd started wearing a new, more confident attitude, and my apartment, though still humble, had a completely different vibe. You still live here? Jess asked, raising an eyebrow, though I could tell she was trying to mask her surprise. Yeah, I said, a smirk tugging at the corner of my mouth. But things are going, well, let's just say, a little better than last time. As the days passed, my so-called friends started to catch wind of who I'd been spending time with. I didn't hide the fact that Mr. Wilson had been teaching me a lot, not just about investing, but about life. And you better believe they came crawling. Hey, Sarah, we should totally catch up, Jess said one day, her tone sugar-sweet. You know, I heard Mr. Wilson's been doing some amazing things. Would love to, chat with him sometime. Maybe you could introduce us. I could see right through her. She wasn't interested in me. She was interested in my new connections. But this time, I wasn't going to let them in that easy. Actually, I said with a cool smile, Mr. Wilson and I are pretty busy right now. He's got a lot going on. I'm sure you'll catch up with him, eventually. I could see the disappointment flicker in Jess's eyes, but I didn't care. She had a lot to learn. Sometimes, life has a funny way of showing you who's really got your back, and who's just there for the ride. I wasn't about to let anyone take advantage of me again. The weeks that followed were a blur of numbers, charts, and quiet conversations in Mr. Wilson's living room. I helped him sift through old investments, reorganize his finances, and even did a bit of consulting on some of his newer ventures. Every day, I learned something new. He taught me about patience, humility, and why sometimes the most valuable things in life weren't the flashy, loud successes, but the quiet, steady ones that lasted. Mr. Wilson wasn't just a mentor. He was the embodiment of everything I had once dismissed. The quiet life, the simple life, the kind of life that didn't need validation from anyone. But the truth was, he had lived through every stage of wealth, fame, and power. And now, all he wanted was peace. Meanwhile, my so-called friends started showing up at my apartment, one by one. They would casually drop by, pretending to want to catch up. But I could see right through their ploys. Jess was the worst. She'd started asking if I could get her a meeting with Mr. Wilson, or if I could help her get in on some of his investments. Every time, I politely refused, making sure to maintain that calm smile that made her squirm. But deep down, I couldn't deny that I was tempted. It would be so easy to give in, to take advantage of what I had, to put them in their place. But something had changed in me. I no longer needed to prove myself to them. I was building something far more important. Not just wealth, but integrity. One afternoon, Jess texted me again. This time it wasn't a friendly check-in. It was a full-on plea. Hey, Sarah, I'm really struggling at work right now. I know you're busy, but I really need your help. I've been hearing a lot about Mr. Wilson's success, and you're the only one who can make an introduction. Please. I can't do this without you. It hit me like a ton of bricks. This was the moment when everything would come full circle. And I had a choice to make. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I spent the evening with Mr. Wilson, going over some numbers for a new charity he was thinking about launching. He didn't know about the text from Jess, or the others, but I didn't feel the need to hide it from him. Sarah, he said casually as we went over some spreadsheets, it's funny how people who were once close to you suddenly come around when things start looking up. Most of them don't realize you were never really a part of their world, and they certainly don't understand what it took to get you where you are. I nodded. I knew exactly what he meant. So, what are you going to do? He asked, his voice almost playful. I looked up from the spreadsheet, my thoughts clear for the first time in a while. I think it's time to teach them a little lesson. The next day, I messaged Jess. All right, let's meet up, I wrote. I'll see what I can do about the introduction. I set the time and place, then sat back, feeling a strange sense of calm. I wasn't going to play their game. I was going to flip the script. We met at a trendy cafe downtown, the kind of place Jess liked, with the exposed brick walls and minimalist vibe that screamed, I have my life together. She was already there, waiting, looking like she'd just stepped out of a magazine. Hey girl, she said, flashing her trademark grin. Thanks for meeting up. I know you're super busy, but I really need a favor. I sat down across from her, careful to keep my face neutral. You're welcome. So what's going on? She didn't waste time. Look, I've been hearing a lot of talk about Mr. Wilson's investments, and I've been working my tail off trying to get my foot in the door with him. He's a huge player in the market, and I know you're close to him. I mean, you've been helping him with all this stuff, right? Can you make an intro? Maybe hook me up with some advice on my career? I could see the desperation in her eyes, the way her usual polished exterior had cracked. It wasn't about her being my friend anymore. It was about her trying to get ahead, and she saw me as the key to that. I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch for a moment. Then, in a voice that was calm but firm, I said, Here's the thing, Jess. I can introduce you to Mr. Wilson, but it's not going to be what you think. He's not the kind of guy who gives handouts. And he doesn't work with people who want things for the wrong reasons. Her smile faltered. I don't think you understand. I need this. My career is stuck. I thought you could help me out. I nodded slowly, my eyes never leaving hers. And that's exactly why I'm not going to help you. Her face went pale, and for a moment, I thought she might lash out. But instead, she just stared at me. It was like she was seeing me for the first time. You've changed, she said softly. You're not the same girl who would have jumped at the chance to help me. I shook my head. No, I'm not. I'm not the same girl who would have let you walk all over me either. For a second, there was nothing but silence between us. But then she stood up, gathering her things. I guess that's it, huh? Yeah, I said quietly. I guess it is. She walked out, leaving me with a feeling I couldn't quite place. I didn't feel bad. I didn't feel guilty. I just felt free. Over the next few months, I continued to work with Mr. Wilson, slowly building up my own business and financial portfolio. The best part, I wasn't doing it for anyone else. I was doing it for me. I didn't need approval from my old friends or anyone else. And the most surprising part? Mr. Wilson wasn't just a mentor. He had become a friend. The kind of friend who valued me, not for what I could give him, but for who I was. He told me once that the best investments he ever made were the ones in people who showed true character. And that included me. As for Jess and the others, they eventually stopped reaching out. I guess they figured out I wasn't the same person they could use for their personal gain. And maybe that was the lesson I needed to learn all along. Not just that success wasn't about flashy cars and designer clothes, but that true wealth came from staying grounded, staying humble, and knowing who your real friends were. When I looked out of my small apartment window now, I didn't see a rundown building. I saw opportunity. I saw a future, and I saw a life that was truly mine, one that no one could mock or take away.